So welcome to my next Get a Life moment with myself, Lisa Davies, and I'm delighted to be joined by Tony Brown today. Now, Tony is from Total Body Health. Welcome, Tony.
Hello.
It's great to have you with us on the Get a Life moment. So for anybody who hasn't met you yet or come across you yet, who is Tony Brown?
Interesting question. At the moment, I'm the joint owner and founder of Total Body Health, which is a holistic therapy clinic based in Wimbledon.
Okay. And so Wimbledon, are you actually in Wimbledon at the moment, or are you elsewhere in the country? Because I happen to know you've been flitting between two parts of the country. That's
right. I'm in Wimbledon today.
Ah, right. Okay. Lovely, lovely part of the country as well. Very, very nice. So I know from spending a little bit of time with you virtually online that this is a kind of a new venture for you. So what has been the journey for you, Tony, that has brought you to this point of this new venture?
Right. I think I'm going to have to go right back to the beginning here. My parents are from Jamaica, and they came over in the 50s, the Windrush generation. Mm-hmm. And my mother was a nurse, and my dad, when he came over, was a student. And as a result of that, we lived in a bedsit, and my dad was still at university, my mum was a nurse, and so they couldn't look after me. So I was fostered from about 10 months old until I was 6 by some Dutch people.
Right.
So I grew up with them. I didn't really know my birth parents until I was about 6 or so. So that was quite an interesting start to life. As one of the strange things was, because I grew up in that environment, I didn't actually find out that I was Black until I was about 5.
Wow.
And that arose where I was just cycling down the road and people started throwing stones and things at me and calling me names. So I really didn't know until that point.
That must have been so, I mean, out of the blue, you know, you just happily living your sort of childhood, and all of a sudden, you know, how did you comprehend people kind of calling you names and throwing things at you? It must have been like, what's going on?
It was, you know, and then I sort of looked at myself and I thought, why are they calling me that? And then I looked at other people around me and thought, I look different. And I got back home and I got in the bath, and I don't know if you remember something called Vim.
I do. It was like a really abrasive bathroom cleaner.
That's the one.
Yeah.
And I got in a bath with some Vim and a scrubbing brush, and I started scrubbing myself.
No.
Luckily, my foster mother came in and saw what I was doing, washed it all off, and said, what on earth are you doing? I explained what had happened, and she just gave me a big hug and said, look, you are a different colour, but it doesn't make you any better or worse than anybody else. She just gave me a big hug.
Bless her. Bless her. I mean, it must have been heartbreaking for her as well.
I think it probably was, because that was the first time that she'd seen me in that state.
And so what happened after that then? How did you progress from there?
Well, what happened then was, about a year after that, I was returned to my birth parents, who I didn't really know, and that was really traumatic. It was very difficult from a cultural point of view.
Yeah.
I didn't know my parents, they didn't know me. My dad in particular was very strict. He had huge high expectations. I was expected to come first in every subject in school. I was expected to win every race. I was expected to be superhuman, and I wasn't. So when I didn't live up to that, or when I did things that he thought were a bit substandard or below par, I got beaten quite a lot. And also my parents' relationship was quite different to my foster parents. They were sort of really lovely people. My parents were just at each other all the time. If not at each other, then at me. So it was a really difficult situation.
Were you able to stay in contact with your foster parents?
Very sporadically.
Mm.
And only when it was convenient for my parents. So for instance, I think they went away one time, and then I was allowed to spend the summer with my foster parents, which was great.
Yeah, because obviously they'd given you stability at the beginning of your life, and now everything's up in the air. You're kind of with strangers, even though you're birth parents, and they're obviously very volatile relationship. It must have been a very confusing time for a small boy.
Yes, yes. And I think that's probably what set in motion a lot of things, looking back. Then after that, I sort of went to school, and my dad, he'd been to university and he'd had a very tough upbringing. He came from the sort of poorest parts of Jamaica, where there was sort of no indoor bathrooms or kitchens and things. And he got a scholarship to Toronto University to do chemistry and agriculture. And then when my mother came over here, he came over and transferred to Nottingham University.
Right.
Then couldn't get a job other than a guard on British Rail. And then he became a door-to-door vacuum cleaner salesman. And he used to take me on some of those trips as well. And it was horrific. I don't know how he did it looking back, but the number of doors that just got slammed in our faces and the abuse that followed. But my dad was just made of a different substance, I think. Yeah. But if he got in the door, that was it. He would sell. So, yeah. And that was one thing about him, which I will always admire. He just never gave up, and he would not let anybody put him or keep him down.
So that's interesting, isn't it? Because, I mean, you've got somebody there who, as a role model, you know, has been quite destructive in your early years, but also has informed, I guess, part of who you are in terms of that absolute tenacity. So I guess what I'm hearing there is, even though out of a traumatic situation, you've also been able to admire and see gifts from that. So fast forward from there, what happened after that? What happened next then? So, you know, you've been kind of dragged around from pillar to post. You've seen sort of the abuse and stuff that he's come up against. I guess that kind of informs, as well as his upbringing informs how he turned out, because we're conditioned by the people who condition us, by the people who conditioned them. And so how's that had an effect on you in your life and your journey forward from there?
I think fast forward from that, my dad hit upon an idea to set up a club for West Indian people in Northampton. And then from that, he set up an airline business where he would charter planes and send people back to the West Indies at half the price of British Airways or anyone else. Ingenious idea, and through that he made a lot of money very quickly. Then it came time for me to take the 11 plus, and I failed.
Right.
Well, having been told that I would go to Cambridge and be a lawyer from the age of 6, that just blew his mind. So he went round to my headmaster's house, banged on the door, demanded to come in, and said, "Why is my son not got through the 11 plus?" And the words just stuck in my mind. The headmaster apparently told him, "He's bright but not intelligent." And my dad went berserk. He said, "So what?" He said, "I'm not going to send him to a secondary modern. What can I do?" And he said, "Well, you can pay for him to go to school." He said, "I'll do that then." So he paid for me to go to a prep school. And from there, I went to a minor public school after that. And the first year there, I won 3 prizes. And the second year, I'm not sure what happened. I lost interest in everything. And they sent me to the doctor, who said, "You're depressed."
Right.
And then for the next 45 years, I was put on antidepressants.
So I guess it was all, you can imagine it was all of those emotional traumas kind of catching up, but kind of what happened in that that second year that kind of tipped it into a depression? Have you got any idea what the stimulus for that was at that time?
I'm still unable to put my finger on exactly what it was, but it was quite a quick thing, you know. It didn't happen gradually, although I suppose it must have happened over a number of years, and then suddenly that was it. Yeah, it's quite amazing. I still can't put my finger on the exact point that happened.
So how old were you when that first started?
I was about 14 or 15.
Wow. And then was on antidepressants for 40 odd years. In all of that time, was there no alternative, no other support offered?
No. I think what happened is it's as though I became a lab rat. And sort of each new antidepressant that came, oh, let's try it on him. Because what happened is that they said that the depression was very resistant, and so they had to keep trying more stuff. The ironic thing is that after leaving school, I went and did psychology.
Right.
I presume because I thought, why is all this going on? What's going on? I'm trying to make sense out of it.
Yeah.
But then the amusing thing looking back is that I signed up for a BSc instead of a BA.
Right.
I'm crap at maths, right? I had to do my maths O-level 6 times. So then when I found that I'd signed up for this, which had a 3-hour unseen statistics paper, what the hell have I done? So that's what I ended up doing. Now, my dad, because he was so furious at this, wouldn't sign the grant papers for me to go. So I had to work my way through, and I did a variety of jobs: painting, decorating, cleaning. I was a roadie for a while. And that was the only way I could get through college, just by hustling and doing whatever I could.
Whatever it took to get yourself through that.
Yeah.
So 45 years of being on different medications and stuff. Did you kind of think there was never going to be a different answer? How did that then develop to where you are now?
I think I was just so taken in by the medical model. You know, well, we've got a new pill. There's a new thing coming from America. Try this, and so on. And over the years, they tried them on so many different pills. I've got somewhere a list of everything that they put me on over the years. And one of the things that they did, because they said it was so resistant, is put me on electroconvulsive therapy.
Wow.
And looking back through my records, I've had 29 courses of electroconvulsive therapy. Now, they say that that's supposed to help some people. Maybe it does. Didn't do anything for me in particular, apart from destroy bits of short-term memory. So I've got...
I mean, that's really interesting. The fact that you were getting no relief, no improvement, and still 29 episodes of that therapy. You would have thought after 2 or 3, they thought, actually, this isn't working. It seems crazy when you look at it like that, when you actually reflect back on it.
It does. And the other thing is that all the antidepressants, if you open the packets and you look at the sort of leaflet inside, it tells you what the contraindications are. Most of them say you might feel suicidal.
Yes. Yeah.
What is that about?
Absolutely. Yeah.
It's crazy. So fast forward a bit. I went through sort of a number of disastrous relationships and things like that, as many people do. At the end of one of them, in a position where I'd lost my job and they're on the verge of losing my house and everything else, I sat in the bath, second episode with the bath, 2 bottles of wine and all the antidepressants I could find, and I took the lot.
Wow.
To this day, I'm not sure how I got there, but I came round and I was in a locked ward of a hospital and I'd been sectioned. And I hadn't got any clothes with me, I hadn't got any money, I hadn't got my phone with me, nothing. Just a hospital gown, those embarrassing things that flaps open at the back. And I really didn't know what was going on. And every day I was just being dosed up with more drugs and offered some more electroconvulsive therapy. It was bizarre. And there were other people in the ward who were screaming at night and running up and down, screaming fire when there was no fire and so on. It was a very harrowing experience, but looking back, a very strange way, interesting and useful experience, as it gave me an insight into certainly how mental illness was perceived.
Yeah.
It was perceived as being mental illness. Who did the judging?
Yeah.
And who were the guinea pigs?
Yes.
And it was interesting looking back from that perspective to see what it was like.
And in all of that time, were you offered counselling, psychotherapy, any cerebral talking support?
Not at all.
I mean, it just seems absolutely crazy, because of course today that would be very different. You know, it wouldn't just be medication. There would be other cerebral approaches to help unpack what was underneath it all, but that didn't happen either. Seems absolutely mind-blowing, doesn't it, in retrospect? So what eventually was, how did you come across what you're now doing and now going to be providing to others, that after 45 years of that experience in differing levels, in, you know, some horrendous experiences, to the point where you feel that there's no point in going on, how do you get to the place where you are now, you know, healthy, happy, well, you know, speaking eloquently, unemotionally about that experience? How did you get to that?
I think I've had a life of extremes. And over probably the past 2 or 3 years, I think that's been my biggest transformation. And it started with moving up north, which is the other part of the country that I've been living in, to Halifax. And the idea there was that we were going to invest in property. Mm-hmm. And we're in the middle of buying the first one. And it's quite complicated up north. They have things called flying and creeping freeholds.
Yes, yeah.
Quite strange, which they don't have down south. And I just ended up on the floor of the flat that we were renting up there, curled up in a ball. I couldn't wee.
Right.
And at the time, I was still on all the antidepressants. And what had happened over time as well is that I'd developed back pain. So I had a slip disc, arthritis, and sciatica. So I'm taking all these antidepressants, and then I'm taking tramadol, gabapentin, and God knows what other, amitriptyline, and I'm shoveling all these in every day. I'm taking 24 pills a day.
It's amazing you were even still walking around with any cognitive function at all, to be fair.
Yeah, I think I must have a high tolerance for these things.
Most people would be laid out flat, you know, out of it on all of that.
So I ended up on the floor and I could not wee. My wife had to take me down to A&E, and they said, looks like you've got a prostate problem. We'll organise some biopsies. In the meantime, take these. Well,
yeah, you've just another pill to add to the collection, yeah?
So I just looked at it and I thought, oh, I'm not going to take those. There's too much. I mean, I don't know what the combination of these things are doing to me. And fortuitously, I came across somebody and I explained what had happened. And I said, I've got to go for these biopsies now. And they said, have you tried bioresonance? And, what's that? Never heard of it. So I did a bit of reading about it. And this kind lady pointed me in the direction of a practitioner in Leeds who did it. So I went along to him, explained what happened, and he got this device, looked like some space age kind of device, and into that, he plugged a metal grid.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, sit on these. Quite uncomfortable. Anyway, I sat on it, and he explained to me what was happening. This is a bioresonance device. And what I was sitting on was metal plates, and different frequencies would go into and out of my body. And the prostate issue was as a result of disharmony between the frequencies that I ought to have and the ones I had. And this would balance them out. So afterwards, I went for the first biopsy, and the consultant said, well, I'm not sure what's going on, but we'll monitor it and come back again in a few weeks and have another biopsy. Went back and had some more bioresonance treatment, came back, and the consultant just said, well, I don't know what's happened, but it shrunk. And the good news is you haven't got cancer, and I'm discharging you back to your GP.
Right.
So I went, result. Went back to the bioresonance guy and said, can you sort my back out now? Because I've got this arthritis and all these other problems. And I've got all these other pills I don't want to take. And he said, yeah, I'm sure we can do that. So then he put some other sort of plates on my body in different places and hooked me up to the machine again. And I put on quite a lot of weight with all these pills. And after a few trips, I thought, you know, I can move.
Yeah.
It doesn't hurt. This is a flipping miracle. And I was able to go back to the gym, dropped a couple of stone. And I said, look, I don't ever want to be taking these things again or in that state of health ever again. Teach me how to use these things, and can you get me one? So the money that was going to be used for property investment then started to go on these devices, and spent a couple of years going to him for one-to-one training. I'd do some online training as well. And I just sort of went right down the rabbit hole. Then, strangely, came across a lady at an event that we'd gone to, because now I was starting to go quite woo-woo.
Yeah.
And I was starting to read all these books. And the property coach that we had was also very woo-woo. And, you know, he said, look, go and read some Joe Dispenza and some John DeMartini. And I ended up going on a couple of John DeMartini's courses and reading all these books, and then getting into sort of hermeticism and philosophy, all kinds of weird stuff. And we'd gone on this course, I think it was called Super Genius, which is supposed to connect you with your intuition.
Yeah.
Sat down there, and there's this South African lady sitting next to me, got chatting. I said, what do you do? And I said, well, we've just got these devices and we're sort of looking at doing something. She said, really? She said, I'm a physiotherapist and I've got a clinic in Wimbledon. Why don't you come and set up? I'm really interested in this. So,
synchronicity at work.
Absolutely. You couldn't make this stuff up. So we ended up moving down, renting out a flat, and we were going to sort of use one room of her physiotherapy clinic and start to treat people there. Then COVID hit.
Of course, yes.
Slight
inconvenience there.
All just went out the window. Thought, we've come down, we've rented a flat. Now we're in a bit of a pickle now. And then things sort of relaxed a bit last year, and we ended up at something called the Natural Health Exhibition.
Yes, yes, I've been there myself, yeah.
And walked around and came across some other bioresonance devices and started chatting to the people who sold those. So ended up ordering one of them as well. Then I saw an oxygen chamber, but it sort of went in my head and out the other side. And then we ended up sort of walking around all the stalls, ended up meeting Marissa Peer after she'd done one of her talks.
Yeah.
Wonderful person. And then we thought, okay, so we've ordered this other device. There's not going to be enough room to go back to that place anyway. So we had to start looking for somewhere else.
Yeah.
And then I was in the shower one day and I just thought, oh, you saw an oxygen chamber at that exhibition. went online. Where do you get oxygen chambers from? How much are they? Totally random thing pops in my head. So anyway, we went down to where they sell these things, had a look at them. Thought that's really good. Had a sit in it, tried it out.
Yeah.
And looked at all the science behind it, the conditions it helps, and it can do all kinds of things. The main thing is that most illnesses are brought about by inflammation.
Yes, inflammation and stress in the body, yeah.
That's right. And what this thing does is it blasts all that out simply through giving you oxygen, which gives you energy, which then reduces the inflammation, opens your veins up, opens your body up totally that way. And thought that goes really well with the bioresonance, where you can clear the chakras and do all kinds of other stuff.
Yeah.
Marry those two together. Then I looked out of the corner of my eye and I saw this thing that looked like a sunbed. And I said, what's that? He said, it's a light bed.
Mm-hmm.
So I said, can I have a look at that? And he said, yeah. I said, explain this. And he opened it up and this bright light came on. And there are 28,000 little LED lamps in this thing.
Yeah.
And they're blue, red, and infrared lamps. And he explained how this goes through different depths of the body. The blue does the skin allergies and the sort of spots and things like that, and wrinkles. And it goes, the red lamps go a bit further into your joints and bones and things. The infrared gets right into you. Okay, I'll have one of them as well. So all the money that was going to go for houses is just gone now.
All gone into your new clinic space. And so you've secured yourself a beautiful clinic space. So when is the grand opening of all of this?
We'll probably have a soft launch at the end of this month.
Yes.
Then a grand opening probably sometime after that.
Fantastic. So I've experienced bioresonance myself. I've had bioresonance treatment. And interestingly, mine was done with a hair sample. So I believe that you can actually even do it from a hair sample. So an absolutely fascinating experience of just what it picks up and what it can help balance as well. So I did that locally with a lovely lady called Rachel. But it is fascinating for a lot of people. I guess they'll kind of go, well, how does that work then? But you're living, walking proof. So are you fully well and pain-free? And yeah,
absolutely, yes. And then after looking at all that as well and getting all the books, and then started to see how diet and exercise and nutrition all again fits into that. And you look at what goes into the food chain.
Yes.
And I probably shouldn't have done that, but I did anyway. And one of the things with bioresonance, as you're aware, is it can sort out allergies.
Yes.
And food sensitivities. And what I hadn't realized was that there are some things to which I'm sensitive or allergic and shouldn't be having. And so I've ditched those things, and then that helped ditch weight, which I wasn't intending to carry, but it was there because I was eating the wrong things for my body.
Yeah.
Now I'm more aware of what my body should and shouldn't have. I can see that's the same with everybody else. And it's not a one size fits all. Everybody's individual and different. So you have to test everybody for what their sensitivities might be. And then you make a list of what would be good for them, what isn't, what vitamins and minerals they might be lacking, the best way to get them, whether naturally or whether supplements or a mixture and so on. And so then it just brings together a whole holistic approach to the body.
Yes.
And then
it works at so many levels, because obviously you looked at the energy centers as well. So we're not just talking about physical body, we're talking about our emotions, our energy, and other stuff that might be affecting our well-being.
Absolutely true. And then, when you look at the mind-body connection, and also then the mind-gut connection.
Yes.
The gut is your second brain.
Absolutely. Always. Neurons firing off there as a cat has in its brain, and cats are pretty intelligent creatures.
Yes. Oh, I love cats. They are indeed.
Yeah. So why would we ignore that? Why would we ignore all of those neurons firing off? you know, we just wouldn't. That's where our gut instinct comes from, isn't it?
Absolutely. And if I can just tell you a story about a cat as well. When I was going through a really dark phase of depression, the cat from next door just arrived and started knocking at the door. And I let her in, and then she just ended up curling up on me and staying the night. I was not best pleased with this, but she would just sit there, and I'd wake up in the morning. I couldn't even lie on my side, so I'd lie on my back, and she's lying on top of me. And I'd wake up in the morning, and her nose is 2 inches from mine, and her eyes staring into me. But she was delightful, and she really helped pull me out of that situation. And again, it's
new, very healing creatures.
They're wonderful. Yeah,
absolutely wonderful. So what's your aspirations next then? I mean, you know, this is a fantastic new venture that, you know, you're bringing that amazing ability for health and well-being to Wimbledon in so many different guises now. What's the aspiration? What's next?
It's to inform people as much as possible about how they can look after their health, how the body works, and how they can then make the best health choices for themselves to keep themselves healthy.
Yeah.
Naturally, as far as possible.
Yeah, fantastic, fantastic. Well, what a journey that has been. What a journey that has been. And to look back over it, you know, sometimes people have very difficult life journeys, and but it's all taken us towards who we're becoming. And obviously for you, that's quite amazing, isn't it? It's quite amazing. There's always a gift in there. Sometimes it's hard to spot when you first look.
I think you've hit the nail on the head there, because what I've realized is I've had a life of extremes. So, and also, while that's been very difficult at times and may have looked like a curse while I was at that point, looking back now, and also having done the John Donatini stuff, I can see the upsides and the downsides and vice versa. So whilst being Black, I had white foster parents. I've been absolutely broke and destitute, and I've been affluent.
Yes.
I've been absolutely fit and healthy, and I've been addicted to drink and drugs. And it's just the opposites. But out of that, and seeing both sides, it's enabled me to have a more balanced view than I might have otherwise, I think. And probably also to help me understand other people more without sort of taking an unbalanced view or a more.
What an amazing journey your soul chose this time around, hey, you know, what is really interesting is to hear you become the observer in all of that. You know, you're becoming the observer of that and looking at it as the observer and taking stock of that and the lessons and the gifts from it. So that's, you know, it's a beautiful place to get to, isn't it?
It is.
So as I ask all of my guests, my final question for you today, Tony, is what is your top tip for life?
That's a really interesting one.
I like to throw that in, it gets everybody.
I think using my experience, I'd have to say that it's being balanced. It's understanding that there is no one reality. Everybody has a different reality and a different view of reality. There isn't actually any good or bad. It's just how you perceive it.
Yeah.
And that you have to see the upsides and the downsides and the upsides. And there is a branch of philosophy, Stoicism, which tries to keep you on an even keel. And it says, when things go well, don't get too excited. And when things go badly, don't get too despondent.
Yeah.
And that all things must pass.
Yeah. Brilliant. Thank you so much. It's been an absolute pleasure speaking to you today and hearing your journey. And I wish you the very best of luck in the launch of your venture. Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa.